We are
Cool.
back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Monday. We're recording this Sunday night, and we have a guest that's been on several times before. His name is Howard. He lives in western Minnesota, west of where I'm at, but you're even further west now. You're in South Dakota, you're telling me?
Watertown, South Dakota tonight. Yes.
Wow. Are you checking all the old haunts from Christy Nome? You said that's where she was born.
I just found that out the other day. We're over here tonight. I have shoulder surgery right away in the morning, so we just came over tonight to be here because we're
Oh,
supposed to get a
okay.
little bit of snow. But yeah, the further west you get, the redder it gets, Mike.
Yeah, I know. And they must be joyous now with all the great possibilities from the tariffs. They got to be pretty excited about Donald Trump bringing down the price of eggs and inflation and all the great stuff that's going to happen when he does that tariff.
Yeah, and I seen that they were dressing her up in them ISIS uniforms. They should be, South Dakota should be really happy because I hope they. All I got to say is I hope I haven't been on the podcast since the night before the election,
Oh, that's
and
right.
everybody, all of us thought, yeah, all of us thought we were going to win. There was no way Donald Trump could win, and when you got the richest man in the world sitting in your corner and he kind of controls the computers and blah blah blah. I guess it didn't surprise me because it's just I don't know how to say this. I like the way you look at things because it's rational, but nothing rational has happened since the election.
Yeah, you make a
You
good point.
almost got to take what can the worst case scenario be, and that seems like what we're getting on a daily basis. It feels like we're getting blitzkrieged.
Yeah, it does. It does. I want to get into that in a little bit, but I want to acknowledge something. Uh, we got all this shit going on, tariffs and all the crazy shit that Donald Trump is doing. And it's real easy to forget about other important things that are happening. And I think this thing that I'm thinking of is absolutely important that people who look like you and me acknowledge. Because of the racism in this country and such, we need to remember that February, Black History Month, it is absolutely an important month, not only to Black history, but the history of this country. And there will be white people that look like us that try to deny it or try to shove it aside or shove it under the rug or whatever, but fuck them. This is important in this country, and people like you and I need to acknowledge it because there's a lot of people looking like you and I that want to begrudge it.
Well, I guarantee you, Black History Month at our house won't be denied.
No, I know that.
um,
I know that.
I I heard they were going to cancel it in the military.
Yeah, that's what I'm hearing too. I don't know how that will go over and how long that will last. Um, and wish your wife happy Black History Month. And I'll be honest with you, I read a lot about history, you know, and the thing that the history that intrigues me most is Black history. It really honestly is. And I'm not trying to patronize anybody here. I find it incredibly inspiring because I tell people, I say, look, if you were old enough to be around in the civil rights era, and I was really young, but I was watching it. When you think about a group of people that had been marginalized, people of color, had no power, had no standing in this country, and then they said, fuck it, we're going to fight back, we're going to push back. And some white people helped too. But the black people in this country fought back and they gained ground in spite of the fact they really had no chance at all. That is inspiring to me. And that gives me hope in the current days.
Yeah. Um, I yeah, I don't know what to think. Um, I've kind of lost my train of thought here.
Well, let me ask you this. You're an old white guy. You're married to a lovely young black woman. You live in Western Minnesota, which is red country. Now you're in South Dakota, which is even redder yet. What kind of position does that put you guys in when you're out there? They're looking. This guy looks like a Trump humper, but his wife is black. What the fuck is going on here? Do you get that kind of response?
Yeah, I don't know if I can say that exactly because where we're from, we're pretty well known too.
Yeah,
Um, we get looked sometimes over here in Watertown, but I'm waiting to see what happens in the next 2 or 3 months because racism is becoming cool again,
yeah.
according to our politics, you know. And I seen a hat today. It was back in my pictures, and it says "Make racism uncool again." And I think I'm gonna start wearing stuff like that.
Yeah, even though I'm an old white guy, I have a particular hard on for racism because I have a particular hard on for bullies, and I think that's the epitome of bullying. And that shit, I don't tolerate it. I don't fucking tolerate it. You can do anything you want, but don't bully people, whether it be a race of people or one person. That shit's got to be stopped. And people that are in a position to step in need to step in. It's one thing for people to fight for their own cause, but they need people to stand up to people that aren't part of that culture that believe in them and believe in their rights and they should be equal to all of us. The one I will tell you this, and I'm curious as to what your wife might think about this. Um, when people say, well, I'm an LGBTQ or a person of color ally, I'm not anybody's ally. I'm everybody's equal. If I'm an ally, that means I have something over you, and I do not. I look at it as equal. I don't want to be your ally. I want to be your partner, and I want to be fighting right there with you. We don't need allies. Allies are the kind of people that sat in the fucking corner and say, I support them, and then hide under the covers. Fuck that. You need to get out and fight.
Yeah, I'm always right there. We're as far as me and my wife, of course, we're partners. You know, I lost my train of thought. I got a lot on my mind tonight. You know, I'm
Well,
thinking
what?
about a lot of things. You know
Well,
what's been on my mind a lot is Trump going after General Milley because I'm ex-military too, and to me that's really scary because he fired the inspectors or whatever there were, and then he's just blitzkrieged us. And then by going after General Milley, even though he got the pardon from Biden, if he gets enough of them top generals to line up with him and not what they've swore their oath to, it could get really scary in this country.
Well, yeah, it absolutely could, and Donald Trump does what Donald Trump does, and I know I kind of set you up talking about the, I got fired up about I was going through TikTok and I was seeing all these black creators talking about Black History Month. Don't forget about it. And I'm thinking, why isn't a big dumb white guy doing it? So I did a fucking TikTok and said, do not forget this. All the other crazy shit, this is important. And I didn't mean to set you up without giving you a heads
Yeah.
up about it. But you bring up a good point about Mark Milley. Um, Donald Trump took away his protection, as we know, and indirectly, he basically put a target on Mark Milley's back. Here's a guy that just served his country to the best of his ability. He had the audacity to contradict Donald Trump or say whatever he said about Donald Trump, all of which was accurate. But now he says, we're taking away the protection. And this is what Donald Trump does. He points at people, he says things about people. We've seen uh, judges' daughters, judges, lawyers, politicians, election workers. This is what he does. And you're right, it is scary that he's basically put this target on Mark Milley for no good reason.
Well, there's a reason is that Milley stood up against him, spoke out against him. And the one thing, out of all that you said, the only thing I would disagree with is he did not indirectly put a target on his back. He painted a fucking bullseye on the man.
Yeah, I'd have to
That's
agree. I'm
that's as direct as you could get. And you know what? That's just like driving a bank robber to the bank. If something happens, we need to hold him responsible.
absolutely. This is very similar to what happened in Afghanistan. He set up a way to shut this down and then made Joe Biden do it. And then Joe Biden takes whatever responsibility for it. But people tend to forget that prior to doing that, he released 5,000 Taliban prisoners, making it that much simpler for the Taliban to take over Afghanistan again, which is what they did. But the same could be said for Mark Milley or any of the other people that he's going to paint targets on. He just, of course, released 1,600 of these insurrectionist pieces of shit. We've already seen that they're a little crazy. One is dead because he had a car full of fucking weapons. Others are back in jail. When you release these kinds of people into this country, you know trouble's going to happen, especially when Donald Trump can get them to work at his behest.
Yeah, and it's he just the way he does things that puts the calls out to do things like that. And then but it never quits. It never quits. Now we got Elon, who was that resigned today because Elon Musk wanted in the protected files.
Right. I think it was the head of what was it? The head of financial something. But basically, what happened is Elon went into uh, try to get into some computers, which basically are the main computers for this government to pay out um, any number of things. And you make a good point. How is it that a non-elected, non-American, non-government official can go in and just do what the fuck he wants? That's just absolutely unbelievable to me. If
Well,
something
and
like
then
that
the
would
other
happen,
thing is that them people that they resigned right away instead of fighting against them because they've already put that up in Washington D.C. that if you stand against us, we're gonna make life hell for you, and it's just like going after General Milley. He's telling the active generals in the military that if you don't align with me, we're coming for you.
yeah,
And if he can get the military to align with him, then to me, that's when it's really going to get scary here in the United States. Financially, we're already going to, start feeling it here really quick. And we sell a few eggs. In the last few days, I've gotten calls from people from eggs that have never called for eggs. And I just feel because I know most of them are Republicans. I just feel like saying, "Oh, by the time you get to the store, Trump will have the price of eggs down. So don't worry about it." Just it's just one thing after the next, after the next, after the next.
let me ask you this, Howard. You live in rural Minnesota, and I presume there's some farms out there. Okay, we have a lot of farmers that voted for Donald Trump, and Donald Trump's press secretary was talking about tariffs, and people said, "Hey, it's going to raise prices," and she said, "Well, if you want to know about prices and tariffs, all you have to do is look to Donald Trump's first term." Now, I don't remember all of what happened in his first term, but I do remember that they put tariffs on China. China stopped buying soybeans. Crops rotted in the fields. And the only way these people survived was Donald Trump had to bail them out to the tune of $58 billion. My question is, if you know people who are farmers that voted for Donald Trump that lived through the last term, what the fuck is their explanation?
That's one thing I don't get, because I've seen them signs out in the field too, farmers for Trump and blah blah blah, and that's right back in the first term. The only difference this time, Mike, is the more that reading that I do, the more China is set up to live without us.
Yeah.
And if we start losing them, what they're going to Brazil for their beans, and they're doing this and they're doing that. We how do we ever get that back? So it ain't just bailing them out, the farmers out. One time, do we got to bail them out for 10 years while we develop other markets, other places? I don't get what they're thinking is how you can be a farmer, how you can be a female, how you can be in the military, and vote for Donald Trump because he told everybody that's what he was going to do.
Well, here's the
And
one
then we
thing to,
go after Mexico. Go ahead.
well, there's one thing I don't think the farmers are considering. They don't understand Donald Trump's personality. Donald Trump is transactional. And when the farmers went bust the first time, he bailed them out to the tune of $58 billion. He did that because he needed their votes. He no longer needs their votes. He no longer needs their money. This is how narcissists behave. I'll give you anything, I'll tell you anything until I get what I want, and then I don't recognize you. I don't remember you. And that's the problem with the farmers. They aren't going to get bailed out because he's going to put money in other places. He was buying votes when he bailed them out. He don't need those votes now.
All that money, because we've subsidized the farmers since I've been a young man, Mike. They drove their tractors to Washington, and the Democrats put in some price controls. Donald Trump and Elon Musk, they want to put that money in their pockets.
Well, of
You
course,
know,
yeah.
I, I think as a country, we're going to get bankrupted we're going to, from within, you know. It's just, it's the most corrupt thing I've ever seen in my life. And you always talk about, and I don't remember a lot of this, but I do remember some of it. And it's when, we had the National Guards going after the hippies and this and that. We came through that.
Right.
But the difference between that and our time now is the government wasn't as corrupt. And then once the government was corrupt to start with, and then Donald Trump, it went from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour the first day he took office this time, and it hasn't slowed down. That's what scares me. I don't know if we can come back from this corruption without a new government, and that's the scary part.
Yeah, it is. It is. One of the things I will say to that, I think government has always been corrupt. Power always corrupts. One of the differences we had back then was we didn't have the media shoving stuff down our face all the time. I think a lot of things were going on back in the 60s and 70s that we had no clue about. And that's not to say that this should be easier because this is worse. I talk about the 60s being turbulent and tough times. They were in a different way, but still turbulent. I'm just one of these people that think that we will ultimately get through anything because we've always gotten through anything. Um, the, the question here is that people keep saying who's going to stop them. We see the Democrats
Exactly.
pretty much sitting there with their thumbs up their ass. I think the only people that can really stop him right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did ultimately, is the Republicans. The Republicans have wrung him out for all they can get when they elected him president. Right now, he's nothing more than a liability. If he's going to crash the economy, if he's going to do these crazy things, that's going to hurt them in the next elections. And Donnie doesn't care because he's not running for reelection. So the question is, when do the Republicans actually get a set of balls and go against Donald Trump? They've really got nothing to lose by going against Donald Trump at this point.
And I'd have to agree that's what makes sense. But
Yeah,
there ain't nothing in this government that makes sense. I think it's,
that's
you
true.
always say it's us against them. I think it's going to end up being Donald Trump against all of us. And that's why he's giving Mark Milley so much shit, because he wants to align the military with him. Because if the military stays true to his oath, I think when the Republicans can't get rid of him, he needs to be arrested by some of them generals.
Yeah, yeah. Let me suggest this scenario. Knowing what I know about narcissists, I'm, I try to explain this in a TikTok because I've had some experience with narcissists. What they are essentially bullies, and they will want something from you, and they'll threaten you. If you don't give in, they'll ramp up the threat. If you don't give in, they will ramp up the threat. Um, and my guess right now is between today and tomorrow, or today, Donald Trump is seeing how bad it's looking in the news for him, that he's going to try to dance around with Canada and China and Mexico and try to get some tiny, minuscule win so he can come back. We don't have to put the tariffs on because I made them bow to me. Then, of course, they'll come out and say, nah, that's not what happened. But that's what he will try to do, because, and then people will say, well, then will he back off? No, he won't back off. If they don't give him room to find a way out, he'll go right off the cliff with them. And that's where the problem lies. He will go to his death, figuratively speaking, to prove he's right. And he always proves he's fucking wrong. This is a game he's playing. This is a game of leverage, or a game of chicken that he plays with everything. He thinks he's the most powerful. He thinks America is the most powerful, and people will just bow and cater to him. I don't think that's going to happen with Canada and Mexico at this point, or China. I just don't think they're going to do that. So either he's either going to have to cave himself or go off the cliff.
Well, I, I, that whole thing don't make sense to me either, because why would you pick on? Now, I got too much to say about China because I don't know a lot about China, but Mexico, I've been to Mexico hundreds of times. Mexico is one of the best neighbors we have. And
Absolutely.
then we got Canada right to the north of where you and I both live. You know, why do you want to fuck with the people that are rubbing shoulders with you?
Yeah.
You, you know, that's what I don't understand. And yeah, I I don't know, and yeah, let's not even get into our immigration issue, because I don't agree with that either. You know, the Mexican people, people don't come to our country because they want to be here. It's because they're leaving. You know, when it gets so bad, you have to leave your own home. It's gotten pretty bad, and you've heard me preach before about when we had a better policy with Mexico, we had true migrants. And when we had true migrants, that worked for both of us.
Yeah.
And we're the ones that took that away. And then we're going to blame it on them.
Yeah. Well, as we sit and watch all this stuff go on, we wonder who's going to be the hero, wonder who's going to do what. And people say, well, what about Congress? Here's what I know about Congress. Since Donald Trump has got elected, they've only been in session 3 days on the week he was elected. Since then, they have not been in session. Republicans and Democrats just sitting there with their thumbs up their asses. And it's kind of frustrating to see that it's not just Republicans, it's Democrats too that are willing to throw us in this fucking blender and see how it turns out. That makes me question the Democrats as much as I question the Republicans.
Well, I question, you're back to, our Congress and our Senate is supposed to be our guardrails.
Right.
And it seems like then that's why I think it's going to come down to Donald Trump, even against them, and the way he's doing the military, because Donald Trump cannot have any guardrails to accomplish what he wants to accomplish, and that's a dictatorship. Does that?
I Yeah, no, I know that's his intention, but he's also an incompetent fuck. So I don't know that he's able to pull that off. I'm just we're recording this on Sunday night, and I just got notification of a story, and you and I will laugh
Okay.
at this because of where we live. Trump declares national emergency at the northern border. This again, I've been in northern Minnesota a lot. Ain't no emergency up there. And at this point, the last place a Canadian wants to come is to fucking America at this point. He said President Donald Trump on Saturday declared a national emergency at the U.S. Canada border, citing an influx of human and drug smuggling coming from Canada and presenting a national security threat to Americans. This is Donald Trump just trying to ramp up his threats against against Canada or whoever he's going against. Okay, I'll declare a national emergency. So what, motherfucker? There is no emergency there, and I know that because I've been up to the border here, and it's not a problem.
No, but now let me ask you this, and I, by him declaring that, doesn't that give him more power to do more things against them?
I suppose it would. I suppose it would. I mean, what he's already doing with the tariffs is enough to piss him off, which is going to hammer the shit out of us.
I thought anytime he declared a national emergency, give him a lot more power and a lot more leeway, and stuff didn't have to go through the Congress and the Senate. He could just enact it or do it or whatever.
Well, that may be
And we
true.
don't need him. See, that's giving him ultimate power. That's almost making him a dictatorship. You know what I'm saying? He's almost to his goal there.
Well, and that's why I say the one group of people that are going to have to take him out of the mix is the Republicans. I mean, the Democrats would obviously help. If they tried to impeach him or whatever they tried to do, the Democrats would vote to do that. And there's talk that there's enough votes on the Republican side in the Senate to actually convict him if he's impeached. It's just a matter of if the House was willing to do that. And it wouldn't take much. I mean, every Democrat, maybe five fucking Republicans to impeach his ass and then have the Senate run him out of the fucking place. Here's the thing, there's got to be something done. He can't be allowed to run roughshod because the damage he will do isn't just to the country as people. And this is where I see him in trouble. He thinks he's more important than anybody else. What he's doing with these tariffs are going to cost big corporations a lot of money. It's going to piss off a lot of countries. When everybody in the world, including the people that supported you, hates you, that puts you in a dangerous situation.
Well, he's going to make us like the lone island, and we're very vulnerable when we're the lone island, and that's the other
Yeah.
party when he tries to take us out of NATO, or didn't he last time, and then Biden put us back in. We that all that stuff is there for a reason, and he's just throwing so much crap against the wall so fast. It's like he's eliminated. He has no boundaries,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it's
but see
how
that.
I don't think we know how to respond as a government. I don't think we know how to respond. We've never been up against something like that.
Well, and that's the thing. If they don't know how to respond, that's troubling. That's one of the things I've found with our government and with our judicial system. One of the things Donald Trump exposed is that our judicial system and our government, Congress, really has no teeth, at least when it comes to somebody who's in elected office or has money or power. They have no teeth. You don't have to respond to a subpoena. You can fuck around and stay out of jail for years and years by just delaying and diverting. Um, that's what I find most troubling about this country. We always felt like, well, we're strong, we're powerful, nobody more powerful than the United States of America. I don't see that now. I see nothing but weakness.
I don't see that either. And that's part of our problem that's happening right now is because we're such a divided country. And then that goes back to, the racism part of this country.
Right.
They're making it cool to be racist again, but they I they don't talk about how to unify us, and then it's just it's going to be, we come back to that thing. It's going to be the rich. What I don't understand, it'll be the rich against the poor, but there's 99% of us that are poor against that 1%. That's a dangerous thing to position to be in too, if you're that 1%.
Well, that's true.
I
And
I,
people
I don't
always
know.
talk about people coming out with the pitchforks. You know, French Revolution, other revolutions that there have been, where there's been such a class war, which is what we're in right now. It's not a Democrat Republican war. It is a class war, and there's more of us than there are of them. And this could become a very troubling, very violent place very quickly if this is allowed to continue.
And and violence, it can become very violent because we are what do they figure the average person owns for weapons? I think we're one of the biggest nations on the world that, as far as weapons.
Well, not even in a war of groups of people, clashes or stuff like that. If people can't feed their kids, if they can't get health care, if they're starving, if they're troubled, if they're scared, some people get in desperate straits. And there's a certain number of people that will um, say, fuck it, I got no other choice. This is what I'm going to do. And then when that happens, I got to believe that people like Elon Musk or even Donald Trump aren't safe out there because there's always one crazy motherfucker to maybe do something. And that's the thing that worries me too, because that just throws us into more turmoil if there are assassinations or something like that. I don't want to see that. I want people to do the right thing, get rid of Donald Trump, the Republicans get him out the door and try to settle things down. But if they don't do that, if they refuse to do that, if the Democrats don't do anything, people will be pushed to that point, and that's when it's going to get even more scary.
Well, and that's what I'm trying to say. And I think, the way they're throwing shit against the wall, Mike, they're actually speeding that up
Yeah.
themselves. And that's why I say that I hope we don't scare the generals that are in power of our military right now, because I think that within a few more days, the firings and the resignations that take place, there's not going to be any checks and balances left because he's getting rid of them.
Yeah. Well, the one check and
Yeah.
balance is Congress, and that's the Republicans. It's just a matter how long they're going to continue to be complicit with this piece of shit.
Well, I think they'll be complicit for quite a while because, the rich people he's surrounded himself with, and you talk about when he got inaugurated, Elon Musk was there, the Google guy was there, and who was that? Oh, Facebook dumbass. I shouldn't call him a
Zuckerberg.
dumbass. He's one of the three
Zuck,
richest men in the world, right?
yeah, Zuckerberg. He's
And that's the
he's
thing
a
with our
dumbass.
politics. They all want to get rich off of us, too. The insider trading that goes on, blah, blah, blah. With Donald Trump surrounding him with the richest people in the world, the people that have the power in the Congress and the Senate, they make money because of what they do and what they know.
When Donald
So,
Trump was first, when Donald Trump was first elected, I made a statement. I wasn't doing anything like this. I wasn't online at all. I said Donald Trump will certainly destroy the Republican Party, which is what he did. But he may also destroy the entire system, which may be what we need, but it will suck in the process to go through that. What we're seeing today kind of foreshadows that. He is intentionally trying to break the system. Now, whether he will be allowed to do that or not, we'll have to wait and see. But when you look at the Democrats and you look at the Republicans, you said something about, either we'll have a dictatorship or Donald Trump will get thrown out, or we'll just have a whole different kind of government, which is scary. That is a legitimate concern right now because there is no confidence in any part of the government, Democrat or Republican side. It's a dangerous situation for our government. And we could be looking at somebody or something coming along as an alternative. And whether that be a good one or not, I don't know. Sometimes people, if they're in pain, they'll grab anything to get out of pain and they may grab the wrong thing. So that's why we're kind of vulnerable at this point.
Yeah, and the other thing, and the one thing we do have to keep in mind is Donald Trump's not going to live forever, but if he gets this set up and far enough in, then there can be a replacement for him.
Yeah, it's going
Because
to be hard to replace him though, because there's really nobody like him. You got to have you got to have the people bought into you, and there really is nobody else like that. Not even JD Vance. People aren't bought into him. A lot of people hate him on the Republican side too. I personally think uh, getting rid of. I always look at problems in steps. I don't say, okay, we got this big problem. How do we fix it? I take it a step at a time. And the first step is to remove Donald Trump from the equation. Once you do that, you still have a problem, but now it's more manageable. And I really think that's what has to happen. He has to be removed through impeachment, through 25th Amendment, or just keeling over, because that's going to be the one thing that kind of brings it down to a normal speed again. It's just a matter how that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, because it's going to happen. He's 78, he's unhealthy, he's going to keel over at some point. But it's a matter how long we can put up with this shit or how long our government is willing to put up with this shit.
and that's one thing I wanted to come back to because I got a couple of questions about the impeachment because now we've impeached other presidents in the past, him included. What's the difference between impeaching somebody and actually getting somebody impeached and removed from office? Because just an impeachment doesn't automatically remove them, does it? Or does it have to get impeached in the Congress and the Senate?
Yeah, it has to be both. Well, an impeachment is an impeachment. Donald Trump has been impeached twice, both times by the House of Representatives. He has to be impeached first, and then it goes to what essentially is a trial in the Senate. And then in the end, they have to vote. I don't know, probably 60 members have to vote to convict him of that impeachment. And then he's removed. That's never happened in this country, but nothing like Donald Trump has ever happened before. There's been rumors going around that there's enough Republican voters, um, Republican senators in the Senate that would vote to convict him. So it's a matter, could he get impeached in the House and then sent to the Senate? But it has to go through both ways. He can get impeached again in the House, but in order to be removed, he has to be convicted in the Senate. And I don't know that that's that's viable or not. I mean, I hear rumors of it, but we've seen it before. He's been impeached twice before, and they sucked up to him and didn't convict him, even though they should have. Had they convicted him the last time, they wouldn't have gone through as much shit as they've gone through. But so it's hard to tell with Republicans. There's there's things that make common sense, as you said, and there's most of the other shit that makes no sense, and that's what seems to be happening.
Well, and now, do you think they could? Do you think at this point the House would impeach him? What happens if the Senate was willing to impeach him, but the House isn't?
Well, you got to look at, people will say, well, the House has the Republicans have like a 2 or 3 seat majority, right? And the majority of the Senate wouldn't vote to impeach him, the Republicans. But what if all the Democrats voted to impeach him and 5 Republicans came over and said, we got to get rid of this fucker. He's killing us. 5 Republicans come over with the Democrats, then he can be impeached. And that's probably the way it would happen because there's so many gutless fucks on the Republican side. There might be 4 or 5, 3 or 4 or 5 Republicans that say, enough is enough. My community is going to go to shit if he continues to do this, and goes to the Democrats and said, let's get this fucker impeached. That's how it would happen on the House side. The Senate side, it's always hard to tell. They say a lot of shit. Whether they'd come through or not, I don't know. But if they're going to impeach him in the House, they better already have figured out what's going on in the Senate so we can get this thing done. The last thing you do is want to wound a fucking animal who's already going rogue.
I hope that happens. And then I want to bring this up while I'm thinking about it because it's got to do with the Senate and it's got to do with our home state. Wasn't the leader of our Senate elected into a position
Yeah,
Saturday or Friday or
yeah. The leader of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party, Ken Martin, was elected to be the chairperson for the DNC. And I really thought this was kind of interesting. I don't know much about the guy, but here's what I do know. The guy he was running against was somebody in Wisconsin. And this guy in
yes.
Wisconsin was endorsed by Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and Hakeem Jeffries, all the Democratic
Yeah.
the establishment Democrats. They supported him and they thought he was going to win. But Ken Martin from Minnesota um, won it on the first ballot. So that was a surprise. And I think that sent a good message saying to these old people, the establishment people, we're done with you motherfuckers. You don't have control anymore. Get the fuck out. That's good news. And then when you take somebody like Ken Martin, he's coming from a state like Minnesota, you know as well as I do. This is one of the more successful blue states in this country. We've got food for kids. We've got Roe v. Wade essentially codified here. We've got marijuana legalized. We've got a lot of great things going on, and that's a tribute to Tim Walz, the governor, and of course, the Democrats in the legislature. And this is the guy that was head of the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in Minnesota. He sounds like he's on track as to the messaging. He understands this is a fight, that this is a war, and that we got to take it to them as opposed to the pussy ass shit that we've been seeing up to this point. So I'm hopeful that he's good. I think he's better than anybody else they could put in that position. Whether it'll make a difference, I don't know, but I got my fingers crossed.
So he's in our Senate. He's in the, don't we have state and federal Senate, or how does that work?
No, he's not. He's not in the legislature. He's a separate guy that oversaw the DFL. Uh, he was the chairman of the
Okay.
DFL. He led the party for the DFL. He
Okay.
wasn't. He's more of an administrator. And when he goes to be the DNC chief, he'll be administrator there too. He doesn't have to be somebody in Congress or in the legislature. This is an administrator over the entire party. It was in Minnesota, and now it's throughout the country. So um, he just basically takes the Democratic Party and creates a direction and strategies and policies and that sort of thing. And up to now, it's all been pretty much status quo, the same shit we've seen for 20 years. I think he presents an opportunity to go a different route. And I think we can both agree at this point Democrats need to go another fucking route.
So he's going to be the vision for the Democratic people running
Yeah, I mean,
the
I hope
Democrat. Yeah.
hopefully he's going to point us in the right direction for what's ahead of us. It's totally different than what we've done in the past and what we've had ahead of us. So hopefully he will be that guy to do that for. So Howard, we're on Monday. When people are listening to this, it's Monday. Tomorrow is the alleged start of the tariffs, Donald Trump's tariffs, 25% against Canada, 25% against Mexico, 10% against China. Everybody, including Wall Street, is predicting horrific results from this. Donald Trump said to us before the election, I'm going to drop prices, I'm going to drop inflation. And then yesterday, he says, well, it could hurt a little bit. It could hurt a little bit, but it'll be good in the end. It'll pay off. And I just remind folks that when Donald Trump tells you something, whether or not you can believe it, he told us COVID would go away. He told us the insurrection was a peaceful protest. He told us that he would bring prices down, that he would bring inflation down. So he doesn't have a good track record of telling the truth. Donald Trump is pushing his will, making these threats, and he's too stupid to back off from it if the other people don't back off. So he's willing to sacrifice everything just so he doesn't have to say he's wrong. How do you think this plays out over the next few weeks?
Well, I hope he finds a way to back himself up, but they're going to go into effect tomorrow morning. It's kind of late to stop that now, but all I know as a consumer, we're the ones that are going to pay for it. And I bet when we go to the gas pumps tomorrow, our gas is going to be up.
Yep.
And that if they go into effect in the morning and our prices go up in the morning, it hasn't affected them companies yet, but they're going to make, if it costs them 25% more, it's going to cost us as consumers 30% more, if not a little bit more, because the
Absolutely.
rich are not going to lose money because of Donald Trump.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's going to cost us a lot of money. And then he's going to say, well, I told you it was going to hurt a little bit. No, Donald, you told us it wasn't going to hurt at all. And now um, we find him lying again. Do you think this is when the prices really go up and it really starts to hurt? I mean, I'm guessing for old guys like you and me, gas goes up some, food goes up some. We're not going to like it, but we'll be fine. One way or another, we'll be fine. It's those younger people that are struggling day to day already, and then you pile this on them. It's going to take its toll on a lot of people, and especially Republicans because they're in the poorer states. Do you think that's the point where they wake up and go, oh, we were fucking lied to? Surprise.
I don't know, you know, or do they spin it so it's Mexico's and Canada's and China's fault and not his fault? Because you got to remember they voted for him because they're in that cult.
Yeah.
So can he do anything wrong? And the other thing, and I thought I heard Old Soul talking about this about they're going to make, and maybe I have that confused, but something about homelessness. But when stuff starts going up, Mike, them young people, a lot of young people that I know are barely making ends meet now. We're going to see more
Absolutely.
homelessness. We're going to see more crime. We're going to, when people get desperate, that's what they are. It's fucking desperate. And I think we got such a tight economy now. We add another 25, 30, 35% to it. It's going to, like you say, it's really going to hurt the young crowd.
It
It ain't
absolutely
going to
is.
help me, but I'm a little better set than, somebody that's in their 20s.
Absolutely. I remember being in my 20s and it was hand to mouth and check to check. I'm fortunate that it's not that way anymore. And it's not because I'm getting rich over here, it's because I don't have as much I have to pay for. I don't have kids. I don't have college. I don't have to buy as much food as I used to. So it's a little easier for somebody who's older. Now, did you hear that Canada, um, Canada is a good neighbor, always been a good neighbor. They're good people. And they seem to understand that it's not the American people that's going against them. It's strictly Donald Trump. And we've noticed some things about Canada. Like, for example, they've had some hockey games up there where an American team would come. And when they would announce the Americans or play the American national anthem, they'd fucking boo the shit out of them. And you know what? I'm not insulted by that. I do not blame them for that at all because what's going on is totally unprovoked. And but Canada said something interesting yesterday that I find very funny, and then it created a response. But they said we're going to specifically put tariffs on that impact red states mainly. And a good example of that is a lot of whiskey comes from Tennessee. So that shit's going to be tariffed as hell. So they want to pinpoint the red states to make a point to Donald Trump and those people who supported him.
I hope they can do that, and I hope they can do that with an impact too. You know, picking on our next door neighbors, the people we rub shoulders with, and I don't care if it's to the north or to the south. That's the stupidest freaking thing I've ever heard of. And you know, they talk about they can shut off our electricity and all that. I don't think that affect you or me, Mike, but I don't think we'd have to go very far north because they say
Right.
northern's Minnesota's. You know, and it'd be nice to think that they wouldn't do that, but how much shit do you take from another government before you just finally have to put your foot down? And you know, I get they realize that it ain't all of us people down here, but you know what? There were enough people that voted for him that got that fucking clown in office. He does represent a portion of us, you know, not me or you or you know, but
Right.
you know what I'm saying? How much shit can you take before you finally put that wall up and say enough is enough when you're in another country?
Well, the term that's being used, we need to remember, it's called a trade war. And with war, there are innocents, collateral damage from any
Yes.
war. And that's inevitable. And that's not the fault of Canada. They've got to fight back as hard as they can. Now, here's the dumb people just can't shut up. When they said that they would particularly impact the red states, Greg Abbott comes out, governor of Texas, and says, "Well, we'll find out what they feel like when they have to pay more for their T-shirts." And people go, "What the fuck are you talking about?" He goes, "We grow cotton here. They get their cotton from us." And what happens when we tariff that? It just becomes a big pissing contest. But Greg Abbott doesn't understand. There are other places in the world you can get cotton. You don't have to get it from Texas. We just have an agreement. We have a treaty. See, that's the other thing people don't understand. In the treaty we have, it was once called NAFTA, that Donald Trump renamed and said it was beautiful and perfect. In that treaty, it specifically says we can't put tariffs on Mexico and Canada. So Donald Trump is breaking a treaty that he and his people fucking wrote. That's how stupid this is.
Yeah, but you're going back to where
Logic,
the
yeah.
the logic and boundaries. And he has no logic and he has no boundaries. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the part that scares me about him. It just you know, the tariffs. I, I you know, the other thing that makes me think about is all these Donald Trump supporters that are are actually figuring it out now, but it's too late.
It is too late.
You know, as far as you can't take your vote back and vote for somebody else, but them, I don't know. You know, they're supposed to take effect tomorrow morning, so we'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
Well,
I just have a
here's the
feeling that
important thing you
once
have.
prices go up, they'll never come back down.
Well, there's that. We saw that with COVID. The thing about it is that what people don't understand about the tariff, Donald Trump can dictate or do an executive order for a tariff. But when Donald Trump does it, it's only good for 90 days. all tariffs have to be run through Congress. And they don't have to wait 90 days to do something about it. So if it gets real bad, theoretically, Congress could say, all right, let's have a vote on this thing. And they could override Donald Trump's tariff and shut it down. They could do that. They may need to have a supermajority in the House and the Senate, meaning 60 votes in the Senate. But if it becomes as damaging and horrific as it sounds, that's something they could do. The question is, will they do that? That's what I'm going to be watching for. How does Congress react to when this happens? I still think people believe that it's not going to happen, and it's possible that it won't, that Donald Trump will back off and claim victory like he typically does. But I also think if the Mexicans and the Canadians aren't willing to give an inch, and I kind of hope they don't, uh, then Donald Trump will just run it off the cliff just to prove he's right. And of course, he'll be proven wrong. So Donald Trump only can impose these tariffs for 90 days. Congress has to approve of it ultimately.
Yeah, and then the other thing though too, Mike, is and I heard another TikToker talk about this. China's getting ready for these tariffs. They've already, like we talked about a little bit earlier, they're getting their beans from Brazil and they're getting things from other places. If I was Canadian or Mexico, the things that we got from the United States, I would be already lining up to get from someplace else. So if them tariffs went into effect for even one day, you have a different source. Well, the bottom line is if you have a different source, will we ever get that trade back?
That's an excellent point. And as much as Donald Trump and the Republicans are terrified of Republican or of China, they are China's best friend now, because everybody we are going to put tariffs on, like Mexico, China's coming in, putting their arm around them and saying, hey, don't worry. We got you covered. They're fucking dicks. We'll get you what you need. And that's what they're doing. So they're basically helping China at this point.
Yeah. No, that used to be our role. That's what we would do as a
Yeah.
country, and China's doing that now. And if they've already lined up different trading agreements to get stuff from other places, they could probably get that, help that along with Canada and Mexico too. So not only the short term damage with the tariffs, there could be a lot of long term damage, and that we could look at a lot of financial repercussions in our country because we may never get some of that back again. So it don't matter how big the tariffs are if you ain't got the trade in the first place.
Right. Well, I was thinking about that back in the first term when he put the tariff on China and China says, okay, we're not going to buy your soybeans. Did China ever come back buying the soybeans? I don't know that you would know this, and I don't know this. I should. Or did we just lose China as a source and we found other sources when things settled down? Because it was a bad situation for farmers back in the day.
And I couldn't answer that if we ever got that back or not. But I think if we keep screwing around, once we lose that stuff, we will never get it back. And I forget, so I don't know. I honestly couldn't answer that.
Well, and it doesn't really matter at this point because, where Donald Trump is failing here is if he was just putting tariffs on China or just Mexico or just Canada, that's one thing. But he's putting tariffs on everybody. So he's pissed everybody off. So even if we lose a source or a buyer from Canada or Mexico, there may not be another place because the EU is already kicking up about this too. Europe is pissed off about this. Who do we turn to? I think the Republicans believe we can all live internally an isolationist lifestyle, and we can't. We just fucking can't. And there's no reason to have to do that. There is no security risk by trading with Canada, Mexico, or even China to a certain extent. But Donald Trump and the Republicans, we just want it all internal. The most hilarious thing I've heard people say is, well, it's all right if China makes those things and we don't take them from anymore. We can just start making them here in a half hour, in an hour. Try 10 years to get the manufacturing up and the technology up to actually make the parts that we no longer buy from fucking China or Mexico.
And we don't have the manpower to make everything internally. And they
No.
wouldn't call it a fucking world economy if we could live eternally. You know, a short sighted person, that sounds like a good idea. But it just, you know what? As an American, we're privileged, Mike, and we like having what we want, when we want it, and how we want it, and that's what we get through a world economy because we have so many sources for things.
Well, it's funny. You hear some of these Trump-fucks talking. Well, I just won't buy a Toyota or a Hyundai or a Honda or anything. I'll buy a Ford F-150. Well, you go ahead and do that. Yes, they do make Ford F-150s in this country, but most of the parts come from Mexico and fucking China. So you might be able to buy one, but it's going to be a lot more expensive. Your American made fucking uh, automotive purchases. And I read something too that there are going to be assembly lines shut down for Honda and Toyota and some other Japanese companies that are building here in this country. They will shut down assembly lines because they can't get their products, and that just puts Americans out of work. So nice job, Donnie.
Yeah. And I've been down through Mexico, and there's already big car plants down there. You know, yeah. Most things that you buy, if you go into Walmart and fill your cart, and this is just a guess, but I'd have to say 98% of the stuff that ends up in your cart is not made in this country.
Right, right. I mean,
Yeah.
how is Walmart going to respond to that when most of the shit they sell is Chinese?
Yeah.
That's not going to be good for Walmart.
No, no. You know, and I actually don't care if Walmart goes under because now that we got rid of
Oh,
all that DEI hiring, they were one of them that are gonna, not. They're on that
yeah.
list where they're okay with not having DEI
I hope
hirings.
they burn down.
Yeah, but and that might be one of our savings things though, is our big corporations here in America would, if he hears them bad enough, they're going to want to get rid of him too.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely. And see, the problem with Donald Trump. Donald Trump thinks he's the biggest, strongest there is, uh, and it's like he was kissing up to the big corporations prior to the election. But like I was talking about with the voters, he don't need them anymore. He can afford to piss them off. I'm the best. I'm the most powerful. Fuck you guys. I don't need your money anymore. And this is going to piss a lot of people off. A lot of people that supported Donald Trump are not going to be fucking happy.
yeah, I, I don't know. The other thing is, I lost my train of thought here. I got a
Oh,
lot on my
no,
mind.
no
Huh?
problem. No problem. Take your time.
So, um, all this trading deficit that he ruins for us, will we ever get it back? And then how do we come back after something like that? And then, as far as doing stuff internally, what are people thinking? We don't have the people to do that. We don't, and we're not set up to do that. It just, how long is that going to affect us? Because even if we can recover, that takes time.
Well, I think people always are saying, I'll be glad when we get done with this with Donald Trump so we can go back to normal. It depends on what you call normal because we will never go back to where we were. prior to Donald Trump. That will never happen again. There'll be a new normal, and hopefully it'll be a good one. We will have to readjust certain things. Our government is going to be readjusted, whether they like it or not. How we do business in this country is going to change, and hopefully it's for the better. It could be for the better, but we're going to go through a lot of shit in the process. But if you long for the days of 2014 and when it was normal, it's not going to be normal like that again. It's going to be different. We've progressed and regressed, and it's a matter of how it all shakes out when this fucker's finally out of the way.
Yeah, and I'm not as positive as you are, but we probably will when we come out of the hole and see the light at the other end. Hopefully, we'll have a better government and a better economy because of it. Because hopefully, we'll make it so this can't happen again.
Well, yeah, you would hope so. You would hope
You
so. I don't
know,
have a lot of confidence in our government, Democrat or Republican, otherwise. But the one thing it has done is kind of awaken a giant, meaning all of us. Prior to 2016, people like you and I weren't out here talking about this to groups of people. I didn't. I thought, okay, he's president. He'll fuck it up, but, whatever. And then when 2020 came along, I thought, well, I'm retired. I'm sitting here. I'm going to talk about it. We've got more people involved and understanding politics and ready to fight back. That in itself is going to change government because all these people that got away with just doing whatever they want and people being complacent or being apathetic, I don't think that's going to happen anymore. Once people are made to suffer, their eyes are going to be open and they're going to be ready to jump on anybody that fucks with us.
I hope so, Mike. And I'm one of them people, I lived most of my life without being too concerned about our government because I always thought it doesn't matter what the government does. Howie still has to get up and go to work every day. Howard has to pay bills every day. It don't matter if we have a Republican or a Democrat in the Oval Office. It don't affect me. I'm so far down here.
Right.
But now that's changed. Our government is so corrupt now, it's going to start affecting me. So in the last 4 or 5 years, maybe a little bit less, I've actually got involved in the politics. But I'm part of that problem because I sat on my duff and let when you
Well, we
don't pay
all did. We all
attention.
did.
Yeah. Well,
This
yeah.
is
I'm
something
not
we're
saying
all guilty of.
a lot of us were complacent because we didn't think it affected us, but it's gotten to the point now it's gotten so bad it is going to affect us.
Yeah. Well, when you have to feed your family and pay your bills and all that stuff, it's hard to also focus on politics. That's why it worked out pretty well for me in 2020 because I was retired. Everything was pretty much set. I had my place. I'm living on lower terms because it's just me and my wife, and we're comfortable. So I had time, and I had security, and I had no boss telling me I can't. So at that moment in time, I thought, yes, I know what's going on, and a lot of people don't know what's going on. I almost felt like it was my responsibility to start yakking because I don't have many skills in life, but I can talk a lot. So I thought, fuck it, I'm just going to talk a lot. And I think more and more people, if you watch TikTok, if you watch YouTube or whatever, there are more and more people that are either like me that don't have the restrictions that a lot of people do, or other people that just don't give a fuck. They want to fight. And I think that's good to see. There's a lot of smart, I do a live on TikTok every so often. And I'll have a lot of the regular guests on the live and we'll be talking about stuff. And then I'll just bring people out of the crowd, which is risky at times, but I'm amazed by how many smart, passionate people are out there ready to do some talking. And this is the most dangerous thing for our corrupt government now, when you've got a lot of people head up and pissed off and pushing back. And I think that may be our one saving grace going into the future.
And we have the technology nowadays. We can find stuff out in the minute, on the minute. I think that's one thing that we have going for us as far as common people.
Right,
But
right. The immediacy is it, the immediacy of media can be our detriment, but it also can be our advantage if we use it as such. And that's what's got to change going forward. We got to use the social media, podcast, whatever, to our benefit. That's what the Republicans did the last 4 years. That's what we've got to do in terms of Democrats and independents.
yes, and I think we need to get some laws back into the media too about uh, not allowing all that false information. And then you got Fox, and I go up to my buddy's house, and he's always listening to Fox, and it's Jesus. I can see why people aren't well informed because they're not
Yeah,
putting. It's just what was that thing that Reagan took out? We got to get some of that back in about where, it's if we're going to watch the news, it's going to be the news, not a line of bullshit.
right. Yeah, you're talking about the early 80s when Ronald Reagan took out something called the Fairness Doctrine. And
Yeah.
if you're old enough, you might remember the days when someone would say something on TV and they'd say, well, now we got to give somebody equal time to sell the other side of the thing. And there were more guidelines as far as what people could broadcast. Now, when Ronald Reagan took that off, as far as I'm concerned, that one thing, even though it was so many years ago, was one of the most devastating things to this country. People talk about how we're divided and want to blame politicians, and they have a certain amount of culpability to that. But the real divisions in this country is the media. Because as I've said before, you can watch Fox News, hear one story, hear a totally different story on MSNBC, and a different story on CNN, a different story on AP. You got all these people with different stories, and then you wonder why we're divided because we don't know the facts. We all know different stories. Of course, we're not going to agree. So you're absolutely right. Something has to be done with the media, either some kind of fairness doctrine again, or do what's happening. People just walking away from it. Don't listen to it because it's not to our benefit.
To me, our news is more about entertainment now, and
Yeah.
and and how bad it just and like ever since we got 24-hour news, it's got to something's always got to be going on. We'll we'll never see a Walter Cronkite again. Our reporters don't seem like a lot of our reporters have any integrity. They want to make that dollar. They want to become famous. They want to, that it's
Yeah.
more about entertainment to them than just actually just reporting the story as the story is.
We are seeing um, some reporters slash journalists, if that's what they are, taking a stand. Though we are seeing some reporters from newspapers saying "fuck it, I quit." Jim Acosta on CNN saying "fuck it, I quit." Because they're tired of telling lies and treating people like idiots. So there are some that are doing that. It would be interesting to see if a group of those people could come together and create a platform, whether it be on the internet or on TV. I think the internet and social media and podcasts and things, I think that's the future of media in this country. If they could actually go out, tell the truth, do the honest thing, and still gain an audience. See, that's the problem. It's not just the people that report the news, it's the dumb fucks that consume the news. They don't want to hear serious, straightforward, dry, important shit. They want to hear the fucking scandals. They want to hear the tabloid type of journalism. So we as a people got to take the responsibility. It's like if you want to be in good health, you don't eat at fucking McDonald's. If you want to be well informed, you don't watch Fox News. But you got to be willing to take that out of your diet in order to be better. And I don't know how much of this country is willing to do that.
exactly. It seems like people just thrive on drama nowadays. And but
Yeah.
yeah, and all them reporters that quit because they have a little integrity. It'd be nice. I thought the same thing. If they could get together and form something and give us real news, because I don't think we have any, I don't even, and this started before Donald Trump got elected the second time. I quit watching mainstream news. I just plain quit it
Yeah.
because it's too far out there. It's always got an agenda.
Well, see, the problem with it is there's always going to be an issue with whoever's doing the news. I've talked about Midas Touch. Now, Midas Touch is a solid platform that tells the truth and does a decent job. But they're also a company, so they have to generate money, and the way they do things may not always be the most efficient way of getting the news to people. So they've got that hanging over their heads that, okay, we want to tell the truth, we want to do all these things, but we also have to make money. So then we ought to compromise. And that's one of the reasons why I like seeing the individuals, not just me, other people like me doing this, because um, I don't have to appeal to any boss. I don't have to make money. I don't have to be the most famous. I'm just going to tell the truth and see where the chips fall. There has to be people willing to do that, people bigger than me to do that in order to accomplish something. Somehow attract an audience, but tell them the truth. That's the trick here. And we're dealing with a lot of simple-minded, dumb motherfuckers in this country. So you got to somehow get their attention and feed them something that's healthy as opposed to what they've been sucking up lately.
And that's what I was going to mention. The audience is the trick.
Yeah,
Because if you can't change the audience unless if the audience wants to be changed. So,
right.
but I think it's going to get bad enough in this country. People are going to want change, and they're going to have to reach out to where they haven't been before, and things are going to be different in this country. I don't think this country will ever be the way that I remember it growing up.
No, I think you're right. I don't think we will ever return to what we once knew in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even the 90s. But that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. It's going to be different. And it should be different because we hopefully progress in this world. The last 8 years, we've been doing a lot of regressing, but it's going to take the people of this country to straighten the situation out. Like I said, to date we haven't been able to trust the Republicans or the Democrats to do what they should do. Donald Trump is running roughshod. There's got to be a point where the people of the country say, fuck enough. We're going to straighten this shit out. And the way we can do that, the one weapon we have is public opinion. We've seen what public opinion could do. Donald Trump puts out these federal freeze of funding, and he gets pushback. He says, "Well, I didn't mean that, or this, or the other thing," um, and the same thing with the hiring freeze with the FAA. Now he's got 3 or 4 crashes that happened, all kinds of people not showing up. I don't know if you saw, there was a video of the Atlanta airport, which is a huge airport, and they had lines through TSA for 4 and 5 hours to get through that line. And the reason is only 2 TSA people showed up after they got the letter saying, uh, you can either retire or quit or take a cut and pay or whatever. And then Donald Trump comes out and says, "Well, I didn't mean the FAA." Yeah, you did, motherfucker. You sent them letters. But he keeps walking these things back every time he makes himself look foolish. And it's impossible for people to understand what's really going on because Donald Trump doesn't know what's going on.
Yeah, I did hear about the long lines at the TSA. He's going to grind this nation just to a stop, and we'll have to see. I, I, I don't know. I don't know how long we can put up with this. I hope something happens quick. That's all I hope.
Yeah, I do too. And it's going to be interesting to see how long big corporations who supported Donald Trump um, will put up with it. To me, it's funny. What's funny to me is these big corporations and these wealthy people support Donald Trump because they want a tax break. They listen to him talk about tariffs and all the things that are going to hurt their companies, and they still support him. It's as if they think he's not going to do what he said. I talked to Trump-lafucks, and I said he's going to do this and this and that. They say, well, he's not really going to do that. I said, listen, every time he talks and says something stupid, you tell me what he really meant was, or if he says something, well, he's not really going to do that. That's just Donald Trump joking around and stuff. Why can't we have a politician that just says what he means what he says, and doesn't fucking lie? Why you would vote for somebody that you have to decode every time he speaks and then decode it wrong because he does exactly what he said?
Yeah, and that's what I don't understand. Why would you vote for somebody that you got to explain his actions?
Right,
You
right.
know, if if we had people with integrity in there, their actions, even Donald Trump, his actions speak for himself. You don't
Right.
have to explain them. He's out to ruin this country. That's just the bottom line. There's just no other way of looking at it.
Yeah, that's what it would seem. That's what it would seem because everything he does is a ruination of this country. I think one thing that people have to understand, Donald Trump's not a smart man. These aren't all strategies that he's concocted. He's got a bunch of people like Project 2025 people feeding him these executive orders. He's being manipulated like a fucking puppet. He's doing whatever they tell him because it means money or power or position to him. So, in essence, what's going on in this country isn't really so much Donald Trump. It's all these evil motherfuckers around him that aren't as stupid as Donald Trump. And that's what's scary.
Well, and then you wonder, I kind of, they're stupid. They're not stupid, but yet they are, because I always hear you say this too, is they don't want just some of the money, they want all the money. But
Right.
these multi-billionaires, once you have all the money, then it ain't worth nothing because
No,
nobody else has any.
right.
you,
You can't look down on
you're
somebody because you have more of something, you have all of something that nobody has. So yeah, it is. It's like when you and I were in high school and we had all the chicks. We didn't appreciate it until we got married, and then we go, oh fuck, there's some quality out there that we've got to. No, I'm kidding, but um, it is troubling. We talked about Elon Musk, and now he's running roughshod, and he's going through uh, um, payment services and computers and such. Somebody says, well, can't they stop him legally? Well, they could if Donald Trump didn't control the DOJ. The DOJ would normally grab that fucker and cuff him. Here's what people have to understand who are working with Donald Trump, though. When this is all over, when this is done, Donald Trump may have a certain amount of immunity, but those motherfuckers don't. Elon Musk has no immunity. All the people that work for Donald Trump. And we saw some people go to jail last term with Donald Trump, and we're going to see it again. These people are selling their souls, their futures, and their freedom for doing what they're doing now. So you can only presume they're thinking, well, we got to win this and maintain power forever. If they don't, they're in fucking trouble.
Well, and that's why they're blitzkrieging everything. I mean, it's happening so fast and so hard, and that's what's scary about it. I hope at some point we can get it back and get it relinquished before it gets so far out of control it ruins us as the United States. But then we got to come back to the point, Mike, that we still are living with amongst all them stupid people that voted that dumb son of a bitch in the first place.
Yeah, that is the most troubling thing. Because if they get sucked in by this guy, who's to say they don't get sucked in by the next guy or gal? You're absolutely right. That's why a part of me hopes that this tariff goes through, and it is short term but devastating, because that's the only way some of these people are going to learn. if if they suffer themselves, if they take a beating. And I listened to a GOP guy, GOP pollster on TV, and he said, "Listen, Republicans are being getting tired of being called racists. And if the Democrats want to win elections, we've got to be a little more sensitive to that. We can't be calling them racist all the time because of this or because of decency or whatever." And I'm thinking to myself, we've been mollycoddling these motherfuckers for 8 years. It hasn't worked. So why would we do that? And I have a solution for people that don't like being called a racist. There's a way to fix that. Don't be fucking racist. It's like cancel culture. You get canceled because you do fucked up shit. The way to stop cancel culture is don't do fucked up shit. Don't be a racist. We won't call you a racist. But if you are a racist, we're going to call it like we see it. And if you don't like it, good. That's our intention.
I've noticed though, every time a Republican comes out and says, we don't like what you're doing here, it's something that they've already done and are doing to us. In
Absolutely.
the last 8 years, they've hit us every time we turn around it just but as soon as we say something against them, then it's wrong. You know what? Fuck the Republicans.
Yeah, at this point, like I've said before, this is a war. This is a fight. Democrats haven't been known for fighting at all. We need to fucking fight. And if we want to go high while they go low, well, then we're going to get our ass kicked again at some point. You grew up in the same era I did. You probably ran into bullies now and again. You got to do what you got to do. You got to get down in the mud. And like I've said before, my dad never gave me much good advice. But the one bit of advice that I accepted was, if you're in a fight and there is a stick or a brick sitting there, pick it up before they do and use it, because they're going to use it on you. And we have to go in there with this kind of attitude. We can't be the more sophisticated, the more proper. This is a fucking fight. We're going to lose some teeth. We're going to get our ass kicked around a little bit. But if we want to win this thing, we better be able to mix it up.
Yep, yep. And it's time to fight. It's time to fight. The coddling time is over. We got to take this country back. I'm a veteran. I don't like seeing what's happening. I, as a veteran, I could never vote for a Republican, period, just because, they don't respect veterans. They want to take our benefits. They want to do this. It's time. The coddling time is over. We need to fight, Mike.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to
So,
wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I know you're going in to have surgery at some point soon,
yes.
right?
Yep, tomorrow morning.
It's just so people know at home, it's a shoulder. It's
Yeah.
not a transgender. It's not a transgender thing.
No, no. I'm out of school, so they don't have to worry about me coming home from school being a different sex than I went to school
Well,
as.
that is a relief. That is a big relief. So, anyway, best of luck in the surgery. Give my best to your wife. Uh, happy Black History Month, and we'll keep pushing ahead. And anytime you want to come back on, just yell out, and we'll have you back on, and we'll see this motherfucker through some one way or another.
All right, Mike. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you very much. And for those of you listening, thanks for taking the time to do that. Hope you have a great day. We will talk to you again tomorrow.